where do we find ourselves today with this?
Oh,
Awesome.
with the background back here?
Yeah.
Well, a few things. This, obviously, the American flag. This was in Afghanistan when I was in Afghanistan.
Okay.
So brought that home, flew that over while we are in the Chinooks and stuff.
Cool.
And this little candy cane tail rotor thingy here, well, that actually came back from when I was in Myrtle. They did a complete overhaul on it, and one of the last birds I flew asked if I could take that with me. But that's just basically there for nobody walks in the back of the tail rotor. So it's pretty neat. This was off of one of the other helicopters I first flew on my interview to Myrtle Beach.
Very cool.
The blade's timed out, so they have to cut it off, and so it's obviously they can't reuse it. But took this home from it as well. It's pretty neat. Just a little memory of where I got all these hours in order to go to my next career, which is in the Gulf of Mexico.
Awesome. You're going to tell us a little bit about that coming up soon, so
All right.
stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Skybomb. I'm here with my friend and commercial pilot, Chris Caisse. He's, you remember him from the Myrtle Beach commercial operations video, and now he's moved into the turbine world. I'm going to let him go ahead and take over and tell you a little bit of what he's done since he's left Myrtle Beach. Take it away, Caisse.
Thanks, Lugo. Last we spoke was in Myrtle Beach, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I moved on from there after Myrtle Beach. Probably mid-season, you start applying for bigger companies, turbines, and they usually want you around 1,450 hours. When you start applying, they want 1,500 hours PIC time, not total time. So that's a big jump there too. So once I started applying, I applied it to a couple of golf places. In the golf, there's multiple companies to choose from when you want to apply. For instance, a couple of the big company names are, in no particular order, but Bristow and Era, they're kind of combined. There's PHI, there's RLC, there's Westwind, and then there's another smaller company that one of my coworkers has worked there. It's called Panther. So that's it's a small operations, but still you find the Gulf do the exact same things, 407s. But each company has different aircrafts, 109s, 76s, 92 Skorskis, 407s, the Bells, some of the 206s. But in that process, you apply and you go interview. Depends on which one you want to do, different type of interviews, but pretty much the same kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
And so once you get there, you do a lot of Zoom interviews first, and they like you. Then they ask you to come down and you do a sim flight and another oral. Sometimes you get to do other options in that sense, whether it just be a written test to actual some flight tests on some of the smaller companies, but mainly on the larger ones, you just do a sim test, some IFR stuff, see how your ADM skills are, because that's a big one. If you don't have good ADM skills, then they're going to turn you down right there. If you fly in the clouds, if you're hired for a VFR position,
Yeah.
and you decide to get in the clouds.
ADM being aeronautical decision making
Absolutely.
for the laymen that are watching.
Yeah,
this.
It's very important that you have that, because in the Gulf, fog comes in real quick. It will surround you if you can't see more than 3 nautical miles, maybe 500 feet, then from the clouds distance, then you need to turn around. And if you wait too long and you do turn around, it gets bad. So they just want to see if you have your skills are good. So once you completed all that, and you pass the oral interview, they'll sometimes offer you there, or they'll wait till next week and get you. But from my personal experience and from what other people went to, if they happen to tell you, we'll contact you next week, the chances are you didn't get the job. They usually offer it to you right then and there.
Okay.
They'll debate within that 5-panel committee, sit you back outside, come back in, and they'll offer you the job. If they happen to say, hey, we'll let you know next week you didn't get the job.
Okay.
It's rough. But once you get done with the oral interview and you get the job acceptance, but just remember, nowadays, 99% you're going to have to get your COVID test done and completely get vaccinated before you get into training. That's an unfortunate thing because some people don't believe in doing that.
Now you're hired and you're doing your introductory training. What does that entail for the folks at home watching?
Well, so you arrive the night before. They set you up in a hotel, and they start you out early in the morning, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. They want you at the training center. They start doing the ground introduction to some of the 407, not in detail, because then they take you over to flight training. It's like a Bell school.
Mm-hmm.
They get you really familiar with everything on the 407. But it's about 3 or 4 days in the classroom, going over the certain company that you're with, about how they run this stuff and what you need to know about EFB, electronic flight book, and how they fly their platforms. And then you go for a whole week in the flight training, and that's the Bell School, and they go over all the components, the startup, the compression systems, what you need to know, the max gross weight, the limitations of it. They get you in a simulator and give you a lot of difficult scenarios, and some IFR scenarios, because if you happen to go IMC, inadvertent IMC, you're going to need to know how to do that. Most likely, you definitely have to be instrument rated pilot to work in the Gulf. So they want to see your performance on inadvertent IMC, your Mayday call, and doing your vectors and all that stuff, and getting to a safe place. So that's about a week long of that. And then you take a written test to make sure that you know all your components and stuff. And on top of that, they also put you into the dunk tank, and you get into the simulator, and you learn how, if you happen an unfortunate time landing in the Gulf, your aircraft's most likely going to tilt, right? It's top heavy.
A little ditching scenario.
Absolutely. Get it out, pop the windows, and get up top, activate your float systems and stuff like that. So it's basically for training. Once you get done with the dunk tank and you get done with flight safety, then you go another week with your instructors for that company, and then you start doing platform takeoff and landings. You start doing the platform and takeoff landings are basically done at a ground airport. Once they see that you know how to do that, then we start doing offshore work and start landing on platforms. Start landing on platforms that are bigger, that can hold 2 aircrafts. So they just want to see, because it's usually with 2 407s, you need to have at least 53 feet. So the blades, it's plenty of blade space and stuff. And then they show you around the different platforms and stuff. Some of them have cooks on it, some are smaller. They want you to get you familiar with that kind of stuff. And you only get about 2 days in the offshore flying, and then they prep you up for your 135 check ride. You start flying around and do all your commercial standards, auto rotate or emergency procedures. And then once you get done with that, then you take your written test. And then once you pass that, you're technically cleared, but your first real hitch, you still have to route with somebody, learn somewhat of the route and how the whole format works, and then usually the next day you're on your own. So, but mostly everybody's super friendly. You have a question about something, you ask them, hey, I never flown in this contract. What's it like? They kind of put me on here. I got 1 day of training, ride-alongs. So you just kind of feel and flow. They don't put too much workload on you the first couple of hitches. They want to make sure that you're good. Then the management always calls you up that day. How was your day? Are you stressing out? They feel you're too stressed out, they'll lessen the workload. So you get a little more comfortable. Once you feel more comfortable, they start adding a little more work to it. But they don't throw you to the wolves and just overwhelm you, because you're flying the Gulf.
Right.
You're flying people right out there. So too much pressure, right? Then they have a stress test for you, and then they want to make sure that if you're able to manage this much stress, you're still able to fly and have a form of safety. Safety inspection of yourself and the aircraft.
Right.
So
Kind of
it's basically
I'm safe
the I'm safe.
checklist.
So it's basically what the training aspect of it is.
Very cool. So total training, from the time that you arrive at flight safety, how long is that?
With my company, it's 28 days. It's roughly about 3 weeks long, and give or take with the weather. So my personal training and my personal experience, it was a little bit longer than 28 days because of the weather. Dense fogs coming in there, you can't fly. That's what we needed to do. So you basically have kind of a day off. You can kind of like ride with somebody too on that time. That they allow that just so you can see what it's like. And once you're done with the actual training aspect of it, that's when you get your time off. Okay. So usually the flip side is if training was 3 weeks long or 28 days, mine was a little bit longer, that's how much time you get off, all right? Mm-hmm. And then you come back to your first hitch, and then you do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, okay. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I've actually completed 2 hitches. So my first hitch was, they put me as a backup. So what backup is, you still arrive early in the morning and do a pre-flight and inspect, get the aircraft ready. And then you just stand by and wait. And if something happens, then dispatch gives you a call on your cell phone and say, hey, we got a flight for you. Mm-hmm. And then they'll print up a piece of paper and you just go from there.
Okay. So you knocked out your first hitch. Now tell us about your second hitch and how everything kind of flowed from there.
All right. So the second hitch was much more intense and much more enjoyable than the first hitch, because the first hitch I was basically backup, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually only flew 3 flights, special, so they call it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to fly as much. Then I went home for 14 days, and I came back for my second hitch. Then I was actually put on a contract. And what that means is there's multiple different contracts, and a pilot is usually assigned to that one contract for that whole 2 weeks. Sometimes they might split it up. Just depends. It might flow into someone else's 2 weeks because they overlap a lot. So you might just do 1 week at one particular contract and then next week. But my personal experience, I was on the same contract for my whole hitch. Okay. And you basically fly a lot or you fly a little. It all depends on the contract.
Okay. All right, so now you're on contract. So tell us about day-to-day operations, how that goes. How
that goes? Awesome. Okay. So you wake up in the morning. Usually everybody wakes up around 4 o'clock in the morning. So that way we can get there around 5. So that gives us, usually sunrise is roughly around 6:30. And that gives us an hour and a half to get the pre-flight the aircraft and look over our routes. Sometimes you might have a special. Sometimes you might have 8 links, to go on that particular day. So a pre-flight, your routes and your fuel consumptions and where you're going to refuel on the platforms. Then you have to also call the platforms and ask them if the pumps or the fuel system has been sumped and is operational. Very big. If it's not, then you can't go there.
Do all the platforms have fuel? Or?
Not all platforms have fuel. There's you look on your EFB, and it's all outlined which platforms are. Okay. Some are green. That means anybody can go to it. Some are yellow. That means you have to ask prior permission to go. Okay. And some are red. That means only if you're on that contract you can go, or if it's an emergency that you need fuel, you call them up on the radio and ask them. 99% of the time they'll say yes. Right. Okay, but go back to the morning schedule. You get there and you get everything ready to go. Your pre-flight, you do an engine run-up, which you just start it all up, make sure everything's functional. Then you call advisory and let them know you're operational. Then they'll start getting their passengers ready for it. and they'll bring them out to you. You get them on your aircraft, and then you start punching in your flight plan on your Garmin, and you take off and you run your flight.
Okay.
Once you completed your entire day, you might have another flight plan you have to do. Sometimes it's between 2 to 3 different flight plans you got to do.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just that one leg. It all depends. And then you would fly back to the platform, land on it, if that's your contract states that. For mine did. And I would just sit there and wait for a call, basically. Wait for the dispatcher to say, hey, we bring the tool, bring these 2 people. Hey, go pick this person up. And you just do that, and you land back, and the dispatcher would just say, hey, go ahead and shut down. And you just sit there and wait. And you just have to wait. Sometimes it's all day, sometimes it's not long at all. But if you complete your day, you have to shut down before downtime. And usually downtime is right at sunset. So, because your day would be VFR, correct?
Right.
So they don't want you flying at night. And then, you do your tie downs and tie down your aircraft. And then you're pretty much done.
So at the rigs, do you guys overnight? Do you guys go back? How does that kind of work?
Okay. Again, depends on the contract. My personal contract on my second hitch, they require the aircraft to stay there. So with my personal company, you have to come back on offshore, back on land on the 4th day. So you spend 3 nights on the rig. Okay. On the 4th day, you continue working, and then you have to be at the maintenance bay before it's sunset.
Okay.
And they do a complete daily check on it. They take all the components of the engine and check it, all the leaks, all the components, basically. I mean, it gets more in depth than I need to know, and they just make sure everything's good. A lot of things are getting close to being timed out or whatnot, or just operational checks. And then in the morning, I'll come back and do my pre-flight again, and then I take off, fly to the rig, and find out what I'm doing en route, or they just tell me to shut down, and I'll sit there and just wait. But usually the pilots, when they sit in the rigs, they get their own bunk room.
Okay.
And because the other bunk rooms on the roller rigs, sometimes they're 2-man, sometimes they're 4-man, sometimes they're even 6-mans to that room.
Oh, wow.
But on our contract, it states the pilot needs to have their own room.
Okay. Great. So you get your own room.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's very nice.
Yeah. So you're overnight at the platform. It's a pretty open access. Are there restricted areas? How does that work?
Again, from personal experience on my platform, where you land, there's a couple different sections, and then there's cross beams that you can walk on. But where I land at, that's the only place I'm allowed to be at. There they have the galley, workout places, meeting rooms and stuff like that. That's the main area of the platform. That's where everybody musters at. And then they split off to like the processing place, the stuff with the oil when they refine it and then pump it, the pump place, the generator area. There you have to require non-inflammatory clothing, hard hats, steel-toe boots, eyewear, stuff I don't have, so I'm not allowed to go on that. And there's clearly marked red tape, and it's a red paint, and it's marked, so I'm not allowed to go on that. So you just be able to walk around. Sometimes it's quite boring, but you figure something out, at times. So
yeah. So dimensions-wise, kind of paint a picture. Would you say it's kind of like being in a ship, or how would you describe it for the viewers at home? Kind of paint a picture of it going into the rig and how it looks from the inside.
Well, I actually did a small little video of that. It's about 11 minutes long.
Okay.
Maybe you can put that in the link in the description and
Yep,
stuff,
definitely.
or you can go to my YouTube channel, and
We'll link that over. Heli of a Ride.
Yep, Heli of a Ride, and you can kind of look at that, subscribe if you like that. It'd be greatly appreciated. But A ship would have, you know, the lockout rooms and stuff like that. So if it tips over, but no, it just regular has doors and stuff. Just a regular. I don't know. It's Connex boxes. That is a good way. So it's huge Connex boxes tapped in together, welded together, deformed to whatever type of needs that they need. But there's someone always up there. Someone's always working. Someone's always up and on the platform working and stuff. So it's always 24/7. Always in a night crew and a day crew. Okay. But it's most like a skeleton at night. But you're free to roam around on that platform, and I do that at night, watch the sunset. Stuff is pretty neat. Nice. But it does get crazy weather out there. Okay. Sometimes the waves are too much. If it's more than 10 feet, we don't really want to fly. Gusting winds more than 40. We can fly. 40 is the limit, but I've flown in like 36. Okay. And quite different than flying back in Myrtle Beach, where you know winds are gusting 25. You know.
Right,
so,
right. As far as in the platform, is that like a safety officer or somebody
yes.
roaming around?
Yes. So there's a flight safety officer on every rig. And most of the times it's the medic that's on it. And he's the one that usually does the briefing of the platform. So when you call in that you're about to land, usually you call out 20 minutes out and 5 minutes out. And at the 5 minutes out, you ask for a green deck. That's all the cranes are down or not operational. If they have to be up, but they're not on your flight path, then they have to stand outside of the crane looking at you so you'll know that it's not moving. Mm-hmm. And once you land, usually the flight safety officer comes out there, opens the door for the passengers. They get their stuff out, get their baggage out in the back, and close everything, watches everybody exit, and then he gives me the thumbs up. Cool, I could either shut down or I could take off. But when I take off, everybody has to be below deck. Because, you know, all the wind that comes up there and debris, if there have to be any of it. So, but
radios wise, I know we're discussing on camera. You guys got some different types of radios in the ship. Can you kind of go over that a little bit?
Sure. We have 3 different radios. Well, 3 kinds of radios. 2 of them are the same, and they're just like any other helicopter radio. But the third one is the FM AM radio that we use. It's the FM 550 that we use to talk to the platforms, the ships, and stuff like that. Usually that's what we have to call it on, totally different frequencies. It gets confusing at times, but they're in sectors, and so you just have to look at what sector it is, write it down, make sure it's tuned in, and just do a quick radio check when over there. Sometimes you can't, they're busy, or they can't hear because of the noise or whatnot. So if you can't get a green deck, usually standard protocol is you continue flying, you fly to the rigs, and then you do 2 orbits around it. Okay. They obviously can see there's a helicopter there, and they're like, oh, they'll get on the radio and say, yeah, roger that, green deck, or they'll just say stand by. Or if they don't say anything at all, 2 orbits, you're cleared to land no matter what. And you just sit there and land. Okay. But that most likely someone should be on the radios listening. But awesome. Sometimes they're not.
Yeah, happens, right?
Yeah.
All right, so wrapping up with everything, as far as this new career field in the Gulf, is this a long-term thing, or where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Oh, absolutely. That's actually one of the questions they do ask you in the interview, and they don't want to hire pilots that just going to be here for a year or 2. They actually want a career, right? They're investing money in you, investing in time. For right now, it seems promising. Still love to be out in the Gulf and fly. So personally, yes, it's a long term, easily 5 to 10 years at least for me in the Gulf. There's a lot of advancements in my particular company. We have 76s and 92s. Even have the H-145s are coming out. Nice. But on Tagalong the 76, I actually got to fly that not too long ago. Was the co-pilot for that, That's also made a movie on that. It's a quick, short movie. It's a ferry flight to Homa and stuff. So check it out. We'll put that in the link description as well. And if you like that, please subscribe. But it's pretty neat. But I also, the end game for me is probably EMS flying. As being in the EMS field, I still like doing that a little bit. It's always a fun gig to do. You don't fly as much, but there's still a lot of need for EMS pilots, and they require a lot of hours. Okay, the Gulf will provide that for you as well. So this company that I'm with particularly has an EMS group, so I could transform over there, or I could go somewhere else. You know, somewhere local where I live now. There's different companies there too, but yeah, that's most of the end game. But
time will tell for sure.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you guys for joining us at home. Be sure, like Chris said, subscribe, like the video,
Heli Override,
share the video, and always Skybomb as well. But thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next one. This has been Jay Lugo with Heli Override. Chris Caisse.
Take care, guys.
Take care.